So, what is this light thing all about? Basically, because Nick was the son of the greatest warrior and the greatest sorceress, he has the potential of being the most powerful wizard ever. Well, thank goodness for being born special because of your heritage, instead of earning gifts or anything like that. And thus, it's not even about him as a ranger, but him as a magic user. Anyway, in true Goofy fashion, the 10 Terrors elect to go and fight the Rangers one at a time. They also apparently have to set up a game, and if they lose, the other Terrors destroy them.
The rules of darkness. He made up the game, and now he's lost.
Hey, what's going on?
I made the rules of the game, and I lost!
Man, I can't believe it! They destroyed one of their
The
own!
rules of darkness show no mercy, but you have 9 other terrorists to defeat. This is just the beginning!
The rules of darkness must be followed. It's the only way we can assure the Master's return.
The Master is returning?
What? The hell? I don't even know how that works. Even in the next episode, some of the Terrors say that they shouldn't be following the stupid rules that dictate that a magic rock decides which one of them goes up one at a time to fight the Rangers. Look, I didn't like the explanation in Ninja Storm why they only sent one monster at a time, but to be fair, that was trying to be a more comedic series. This is trying to take itself seriously. Give us a better explanation of how these rules work and why they exist. Was there a spell placed on them? Some kind of curse that prevents them from all being on Earth at the same time? Well, that can't be it. In their first episode, they all went up to Earth at the same time. Anyway, because the Rangers keep running off all the time, Lily gets hired at the music shop.
Why'd you decide to work here?
Are you going after Toby?
No.
Or maybe she's trying to infiltrate the team and take us down one by one.
No, I'm not. Just want to be like everyone else. I want to be your friend. Is that so hard to believe?
Yes.
They've got a point. When they were in the underworld, you said you wanted to make them your pets. This is not a character arc. You left because you were bored. Anyway, Claire is followed after Udana and wants to come with her despite Udana telling her to go back.
No, I'm not going.
You have no idea, child, the dangers that lie ahead. This is no place for an apprentice.
But that's just it. I am not an apprentice anymore. I'm the one with magic. I am the sorceress here, and you need me.
Meanwhile, as the Rangers fight the second Terror, Nick unlocks his Battleizer. The dragon transforms into a new set of armor for him that, while looking a little cluttered in its colors with the addition of Bloodwood's scheme, otherwise looks pretty good. The leader of the Terrors, curious why they haven't seen any evidence of the Master's return, uses a mystical lake to seek him out. However, instead he sees Lianbo, now in Korag's armor, stating that the Master will never rise again. Lily, in the meanwhile, sulks about how she'll never have any friends and her mother is too busy to talk to her. She finds the Book of Prophecy, which she reads and discovers that she's destined to become the Queen of Vampires. Once again, free will gets chucked in the garbage. Anyway, during a battle with the Terrors where the Rangers are getting their asses kicked, Lianbo leaves his post guarding the Master. However, this was part of the Terrors' plan, since they have Necroli shoot a scale into him that allows the Terrors to track him. Also in the two-parter Light Source, Udana is taken captive by the Terrors. Udana, competing with Princess Shayla for number of times kidnapped. Lily does run into Phineas, and the two bond over the fact that their respective families reject them because of their dual natures. Lily is convinced to save Udana by the talk, and Phineas accompanies her. Along the way, they find Claire, who joins up with their fellowship. On top of that happy situation, the Terrors locate Lianbo. Claire, Phineas, and Lily find Udana, Phineas even displaying his impressive fighting prowess to a suddenly smitten Lily.
Phineas, what are you doing?
I'm wiping the floor with him.
Lily and company free Udana and return her snow staff, allowing her to once again become the White Ranger. Toby also spots the Rangers morphing, discovering the truth about them, despite their attempts to inform him previously. Lianbo, meanwhile, is continually attacked by the Terrors and sent him hurtling deeper into the underworld, regaining the energy of the Master. Using astral projection, Udana manages to locate Lianbo and restore him. He can morph now into his Korag form, except it's red instead of purple because, red is less evil than purple, I guess. One of the terrors has to be possessed by the Master's energy in order to ensure his return, eventually taking one of the terrors and transforming them into him, leading into the two-part series finale, Mystic Fate. Phineas had been hired by Toby to help out with the music shop due to the Rangers continually leaving, of course, but his appearance frightens off customers, though I don't know why. It's not like he looks all that much different from a normal person. The Master dispatches one of the remaining terrors to the surface, and Necroli, finally giving a damn about her daughter, begs her to be spared from the onslaught. However, after that terror fails to destroy them, the Master decides to finally take matters into his own hands and goes after Nick, possessing him and using him to attack a village in the forest. He takes on the appearance of Korag and brings the battle to the command tree, fighting Lianbo while smashing up the place. Nick defeats Lianbo, who manages to get through to him by eventually refusing to fight. The Master's influence is expelled, well thanks for that 5-minute plot cul-de-sac, but the damage has been done in the eyes of the forest dwellers and fantasy creatures who think that humans don't belong in the forest. To make matters worse, Phineas is let go from the music store. We'll get back to that in a bit. The Snow Prince, a previous one-off character who had appeared in The Snow Prince, arrives to tell the group that the magical source is under attack by the Master, and the Empress of all good magic, the Mystic Mother, has been destroyed. Naturally, this is the first time we've ever heard of her. But come on, it's not like we've ever seen her before anyway.
Known as Rita in the Dark Days, she now uses her power to fight all that is evil.
Doesn't ring a bell at all.
You are the Mystic Mother. Once I destroy you, good magic will be gone forever.
You are giving me a headache.
Yeah, so apparently Rita Repulsa, after being cured by the Z-Wave, retained her magical powers and became the source of all good magic on Earth. I can buy that. So why do I not sound more excited about this? Well, for one, I had already seen spoilers about this, which unfortunately people still like to tell me despite my pleas not to. Two, this comes right the hell out of nowhere. If we had actually established the character of the Mystic Mother, even mentioned her at some point prior, this would have been really cool. Instead, it's just kind of pointless fan service because the actress who played her in the Sentai just happened to be the same woman who played Rita in Jew Ranger. Or Witch Bandora, as she was called there. Or possibly just a tribute to said actress, since she sadly passed away a few months before this. Furthermore, she's not even voiced by Barbara Goodson. Much like with not having Tommy in the SPD and Dino Thunder team-up episode, would it have been that difficult to call Barbara Goodson to have her do the voice? It's a voiceover! You don't even have to fly them out to New Zealand. Hell, you could literally do it over the phone! If you're worried about the sound quality, bear in mind it's not like the sound has been all that great in the show, but we'll get to that in the analysis portion. Daggeron and Lianbo go to check on the Mystic Mother while the Rangers fight the remaining terrors. The Master, still hanging out at the remains of the Mystic Mother's palace, uses tentacle hentai to devour their night forms and just generally kick their asses. Genji sacrifices himself to save the Rangers from one of the terror's blasts, and Udana is taken prisoner, again, to end part 1. The Rangers destroy one of the two last terrors as the Master arrives on Earth, consuming all of the magic they throw at him. The Rangers retreat and Nick thinks it's all over, something of a recurring problem with him, his tendency to give up every time things start to suck.
Fine. Yes, I've given up.
Don't you say that. Don't you say that. Not you. You have held us together through all of this. You will not give up. Listen to me. Giving up is not an option for you. We are a team, and you are this team's leader. We go on no matter what.
But then the Master shows up again and knocks them down. Nick summons forth all of the remaining good magic left in the world and attacks the Master. It hurts him, but it uses up all of the magic they have left. They're saved at the last second by Claire, who arrives with the Snow Prince. She explains that the Mystic Mother survived and made her a full sorceress. Speaking of stuff that's explained in flashback, Udana arrives with Necroli and one of the terrors who had turned on the others. The final terror was destroyed and they blast the Master away. At Lily's urging, Necroli is able to restore Daggeron and Lianbo, because apparently she can do that. Although this does make her human. Because
Lily's mommy's hot.
Genji is also back. Because Anyway, the Master returns and everyone stands to fight him despite the lack of magic. However, they don't stand alone. Apparently off-screen, Toby spoke to the people of Briarwood that the things in the forest are nothing to fear, and they believed him because... Then Phineas spoke to the fantasy creatures in the forest that the humans were nothing to fear. And now they've all gathered to help restore the Rangers' magic. Everyone joins hands.
Let's show 'em together! All right.
We believe in magic!
And I believe in Santa Christ. But yeah, they're all restored and say their names while things explode behind them. They fire their magic into Cthulhu Face, who consumes all of it, but he absorbs so much into him that he blows up. Which I think is the first time the Rangers have ever defeated a villain by making it overeat. Nick decides to leave.
Yeah, I'm going to see my adopted parents. There's a lot to tell them.
So, you're not coming back?
I didn't say that.
You are coming back.
What I'm saying is that I'd like to come back if there was something or someone to come back for.
Oh. Well, there is. There's Xander, Vita, Chip, Toby, Phineas, Lily, and me. I want you to come back for me.
And it seems the forest creatures and the people of Briarwood are now together to listen to Vita's horrible music.
Ready?
Ready.
The end.
Mystic Force is a very divisive series for people, and I get why. See, it's not really a Power Rangers series. It's a fantasy series that happens to have Power Rangers in it. As I said, aside from Nick, the Rangers aren't actually the focus of the season. It's on all the other peripheral characters and their relationships to one another. The only other exception to that is Udana, but while she is a Ranger, her powers in that area are benched for most of the season. Now, it's perfectly okay to have an extensive mythology built around your show, but you need to have a reason for the main characters to be affected by that mythology. Nick is the only one who actually is, but I'll get to the problems there when we discuss his character. I talked about how a lot of the characters are also really flat, which doesn't help matters. Claire, Phineas, and Lily are the best, but that only goes so far. As I said, Lily's turn from the dark side was rather sudden and came about for pretty shallow reasons. However, when we actually had her standing alongside Phineas and the two discussing their own outsider traits, there actually seemed to be genuine character there and interesting problems to explore. That never were. With Phineas, he always seemed disconnected with the other forest people since he had his own camp away from all of them. Claire felt the burden of living up to her mother's example while being so incompetent at magic at the start, but by the end of the series, she could cast spells like nobody's business and actually had an arc to her courage and rise from apprentice to full sorceress. And yet they were three comic relief characters who had more done with them and more interesting stories than the people who the show was supposed to be about. On that point, Mystic Fate is unfortunately a really bad finale to the show because it tries to do too much in too little time. Then again, pacing is a major problem with the season overall. A lot of people blame the fact that the show had been cut down to 32 episodes instead of 40 for that, but I contend it's because they wasted their time instead of having an exact plan for what to do. For example, we didn't need any mythology built around Catastros. He became completely irrelevant to the story, yet they had 2 episodes where Catastros was kind of a big deal. There is a subplot in an episode where Toby has to bring Phineas to a dentist, or yet another where Phineas was raising the dragon after Genji had a temper tantrum about getting people to pay attention to him. This is not good use of your time. There is a brief subplot where Necroli gets Korag's magic. And then he gets it back. Again, wasting time. Mystic Fate feels like 6 episodes that have been compressed down into 2. You've got Nick turning evil, the Mystic Mother stuff, the growing tensions between the humans and fantasy creatures, which, by the way, seemed to only be a thing in the first and last episodes and was never mentioned outside of them. One of the terrors turning on the others, Nick being jealous of his father's power, and finally the Master's last battle. They could have spent more time on developing any of these elements, but instead we needed an episode devoted to Genji. You know, the other comic relief character. Speaking of, I think the interaction between the mystical creatures of the forest and the ordinary humans is an interesting thing when you put it side by side with SPD. It kind of fascinated me how, in SPD, people seem to accept aliens as being part of everyday life in such a short amount of time. However, Mystic Force starts things off with the 2 forces at odds fearing the other. When they come together at the end, that could have actually been the development that allowed them to so readily accept aliens in the future setting depicted in SPD. Of course, as I said, the fact that this is the first time since the beginning of the series that they bring any of this up just goes to show that the series was kind of schizophrenic and didn't seem to know what it wanted to do. Not helped is the overall pacing of the show. They do have quiet moments where characters just talk and interact and there's development, but they feel very removed from one another. It's not helped that the music and sound design was such a mess to begin with. The stupid laser or whatever sounds when characters jumped, or the music that didn't match the action. Said action also moved far too quickly to really get invested. Oh, the action slowed down sometimes, like when there's a Kalish explosion and they needed to do the same explosion we just saw but slowed down. But then there were the Megazord transformations, which felt like someone took the Sentai footage and hit fast forward. Otherwise, the series felt very chaotic and just moving from point to point too quickly. The theme song is never used to glorious effect for a finishing action, mostly because the theme song sucked so much and didn't match an action show. The music overall wasn't used particularly effective either, just a lot of bland material, the crappy stuff that Vito was always subjecting us to in the music store, or not letting the quiet moments have either underplayed music or matching the emotional tones they were going for. The villains are, unfortunately, not much to talk about. By their very nature, they're pure evil with no shades of gray, which makes stuff like the 2 terrors who didn't want to fight all the more confusing. Why the hell are they hanging around being powerful and associating with a being who wants to kill and destroy and crap if they don't like being evil and conquering? You could have done something with Imperius having betrayed the forces of good before, but with that, he was completely unrepentant and slimy, and the good guys virtuous and noble. Necroli's sudden realization of loving her daughter also seemed to come out of nowhere, since she seemed to not give a damn about Lily unless she was actually trying to further her mother's goals. And of course, to make matters even better, is that half of the evil forces all spoke in the completely interchangeable "Roar, Growly Deep, I am roaring for no reason" voice. You know, even though Lord Zed had that kind of deep growly voice, he still had different moods to go with it that showed a range. None of these guys ever changed their tone with the voice. Much like in the Mighty Morphin days, the villains have access to other dimensions, like the opaque dimension or the serpent dimension.
And one world with nothing but shrimp. I tired of that one quickly.
I do rather like that kind of goofiness, since it's something otherworldly for villains to utilize for new settings for fights to take place in. Near the end of the series, when it tried to focus on Nick being the light and more important, it became a major disservice to the other characters, especially since, for all their talk about how special Nick is and how Nick is supposed to be this great force that can end the evil darkness and etc., The truth is that Nick doesn't do anything. There is nothing about Nick that makes him better able to defeat them. When we get to Samurai, that will also have a big focus on the Red Ranger, but there is actually a good reason for it. But Nick? For crying out loud, at every major occurrence where the Rangers lose their power or things look at their crappiest, Nick is the first to give up. He's an arrogant, unsympathetic, over-emotional douchebag. He has no character arc. While he's the first to volunteer to help at the start of the season, when it actually requires greater commitment, he doesn't embrace it at all. It makes him a very uneven person, and despite his protests that he's finally found his family among the team, a place where he belongs, he seems to pretty much abandon the other Rangers when he discovers his true parentage. At the end of the series, he's perfectly willing to leave all his friends to go motorcycling with mommy and daddy. He only says he'll come back if he has something there for him in a romantic sense, which just comes right the hell out of nowhere. Well, okay, except for when she flirted with him back at the beginning of the show, but I admit that could have just been her performance rather than anything actually written about the two. The person he should have ended up emulating was Xander. While Xander's character is centered around his laid-back attitude, he's extraordinarily friendly and confident in himself. He always wants to feel like he's in charge or on top of things, but doesn't actually put forth the effort to get it done. There was only one episode that focused on his lazier attitude, and it showed that if he did commit himself to action, he was really effective at it, which probably went to show why he was made a manager of the music store at the end. Now, why do I bring him up in relation to Nick? Well, Nick's outsider feelings come about because he was adopted and traveled around everywhere without having a chance to settle and make friends. Thus, he doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere. Because the show perpetually takes place in California, despite the abundance of people speaking with New Zealand accents, Xander apparently moved to the USA from New Zealand in his backstory. He admits how crappy his time was when he first moved to the USA.
When I came to this country, I didn't know anyone. No one wanted to know me. I was a new guy with the silly accent, picked last on the school teams. I was teased, mercilessly. It takes time to find your place. I understand loneliness. I understand leaving your friends behind. But you're not alone, Nick. You got us. We're your friends. We're your mates. Your family.
And while Nick just seemed to be a dick to people who welcomed him with open arms, Xander embraced the fact that he had friends and people who cared about him and would put up with him. Chip is my favorite character, despite the fact that he doesn't really have an arc or much character development throughout the series. The reason I like him is mostly because of his embrace of knightly values and chivalry, and I mean chivalry in the Arthurian sense of virtuous conduct and fighting evil, which I can relate to. Ever wonder why Camelot is my favorite movie? Well, it's because that film actually changed me, changed my philosophy of life, and made me want to live my life with the credos it presented. Might for right, i.e. using strength and power to only do good, and right for right, that you do the right thing because it's the right thing. It taught me that violence is not strength and compassion is not weakness. Chip wants to live up to the same ideals, sometimes to the point of fanaticism, as was seen in Soul Spectre, when he feels he failed the people he had sworn to protect. However, it's unfortunate that they never really explored it. Bear in mind, just because I believe in those ideals doesn't mean I think they're easy to live up to, especially in a world that can be harsh, cruel, and not reflect those virtues. It seems like Chip is the kind of person who's in for a rude awakening about the complexity of the world. Except it never really comes. Still, I like the occasional subtle things they did, like when everyone is talking about getting back their powers in Dark Wish, he wants something specific back.
And we'd all have music.
And Udana would have root core.
And we'd have our dragon back.
And I'd have my cape back. What? It may not mean much to you, but it does to me.
The cape, and by extension the entirety of his ranger garb, is pretty much his armor. It's a symbol that he's actually achieved his goal of becoming a knight, something that Daggeron had even promised to train him for. Not that we ever actually see it happen. Another thing that sadly never got much development beyond the two-parter it appeared in was the relationship between Chip and Vita. Apparently during high school, Chip would dress up as a superhero all the time, and while I don't really think that's the smartest thing to be doing, Vita defended him, and the two have been close friends during all this time. I'm actually really happy that they never really got into a romantic relationship, since it seems like a lot of the time, two people of the opposite gender can't just be close on television or movies without them reverting to romantic interests. But on the other hand, it would have been some development in that area. Lord knows Vita needed some development, since she never really got any either. She wants to be a DJ. That's it. That's her character. She plays the crappy music in the store and occasionally gets into pointless fights with the others or displays compassion along with the others. I will grant her the fact that she's protective of her sister and was sympathetic enough about one of the 10 terrors who didn't want to actually hurt anyone and defended them from harm, but frankly it felt like that role should have actually fallen to Madison. Madison, while also lacking a character arc or much character development, feels like the source of compassion for the group. As established in the episode Rock Solid, she's the most introverted and shy of the group, preferring to express herself through the creation of pointless videos about herself and her friends. That seems to get dropped by the wayside as more of the show becomes about the mythology of the series, but her empathy helps give her a more defined role as the heart of the team. When the team goes to the tribunal, she's the one who speaks up for restoring freedom and color for people. She was the one who spoke to Genji about his issues and convinced him to come back into the fold. Hell, in The Light, she worried that she was the one who contributed the least to the group and felt crappy about not being more helpful. Although, again, nothing really came of it other than her using her water-based magic to help save the day. Udana has no character development. She is pretty much exactly the same from start to finish, which is why I probably enjoyed seeing her in Dark Wish as a crazy old lady. It was at least doing something different with her beyond just being a mentor to the group. I also liked that she actively decided to take a journey to find her husband. I joked about the amount of times she was captured, but honestly, despite losing her ranger powers early on in the kidnappings, she really never came across as helpless or a damsel in distress. She still was capable of a lot of powerful spells and was willing to sacrifice her power in order to save the Rangers. All around a pretty good mentor, it's just there wasn't much else in there. Daggeron had a similar deal. They did have an episode where the aforementioned Snow Prince tells him he needs to learn from Nick and be more impulsive, but honestly, it didn't really ring true. They could have just as easily done the same thing they did, but less impulsively. Daggeron was just dull. Despite being a comic relief character, Genji at least was the better part of their pair, since he did make funny remarks here and there, while Daggeron was just a bit of a stick in the mud. For all the complaints I made in this video, however, I do want to stress that Mystic Force is not really a bad season. It has a lot of bad elements to it that hurt it, but episodes like Stranger Within and Dark Wish show that there was a lot of things to like about the series. It really makes me wish the show had more focus on the interpersonal relationships with the Rangers instead of the larger mythology. Hell, the Light Source two-parter where Phineas, Claire, and Lily go to rescue Udana, and the character moments there are especially enjoyable. When the show focused on character conflicts and the emotions they had for each other, the show was at its best. Less so when it was about the action or about good or evil magics or whatever. As such, I still think the season is worth a watch. However, for as many problems as we've had with this season, we will finally reach what I feel to be the worst that Power Rangers has to offer next time when we accelerate into Operation Overdrive.
Come to Mama. Florum xylocopum.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast!